poor waitress discovered the widowed millionaire's twins trapped inside the car. ... Her gesture will move you. The rain had just turned into a warm vapor over the parking lot when the black sedan's alarm went off sharp, insistent, cutting through the thick Boston air like a blade. Calla Whitmore was wiping down the last table of her double shift, her red uniform sticking to her back, her sneakers still damp from the earlier downpour. The Luna de Back Bay wasn't much to look at, faded booths, fluorescent lights that hummed too loud, the kind of place where the coffee was always lukewarm and the tips were never enough. But it was hers, or at least it was the closest thing to hers she'd ever had. She'd learned early not to expect favors. Her mom had been sick for years, the kind of sick that drained bank accounts faster than it drained hope. Calla had worked nights, mornings, weekends, whatever it took to keep the lights on and the creditors at bay. 23 years old, and she was already collecting scraps of dreams. The kind that didn't pay rent but made it easier to breathe. The alarm kept blaring. At first, she ignored it. People were always setting off their car alarms in Back Bay, a stray cat, a gust of wind, someone bumping a mirror. But then she heard it, the crying, high-pitched, desperate, the kind that makes your stomach drop and your feet move before your brain catches up. She dropped the rag on the counter and bolted toward the side door. The parking lot was empty, heat still rising off the asphalt in lazy waves. The black sedan sat in the middle of the lot, its windows barely cracked, alarm shrieking into the humid evening, and in the back seat, two baby twins. From the look of it, were screaming their lungs out, tiny faces flushed red, little fists clenched tight. "Oh my God," Calla whispered, her heart hammering. She looked around, no one, not a soul, just her and those babies and the heat shimmering off the hood. She didn't think. She didn't have time to think. She ran to the car, wedged her fingers into the gap of the back window, and pulled. It didn't budge. The babies wailed harder, their little bodies trembling. Sweat dripped down her temples. She glanced back at the restaurant, still empty. No one was coming. "Breathe, sweethearts, breathe," she murmured. Her voice cracking, she shoved her arm through the narrow opening, biting back a yelp as the metal scraped her elbow and fumbled for the lock. Her fingers found it. Click. The door swung open. The wave of heat that poured out nearly knocked her back. It was like opening an oven. She reached in and scooped up the first baby. A boy with a gray beanie slipping off his head, he grabbed onto her uniform with surprising strength, his little fingers digging into the fabric like he'd been waiting for someone, anyone, to find him. She cradled him against her chest, feeling his rapid heartbeat against hers. I got you, she whispered. Reaching for the second baby, this one had a pink onesie, a girl, maybe, though it was hard to tell. She gathered them both in her arms, awkward and trembling, and grabbed the faded blue blanket from the seat, a blanket she'd had since a neighbor. Old Mrs. Callahan passed away last year, and left Calla a box of odds and ends. It smelled faintly of lavender. She wrapped it around the babies, holding them close. The crying started to ease, not much, but enough for her to breathe. And then she heard footsteps. She looked up, and there he was. Tall, expensive suit slightly rumpled. Dark hair, much like he'd been running his hands through it all day. Ronan Fairfax. She knew who he was. Everyone in Back Bay knew who he was. Half the buildings on Boylston Avenue had his name on them. Millionaire widower, real estate mogul, and, apparently, father of these two babies she was now holding. He stopped dead, staring at her like she'd just materialized out of thin air. His face went pale, then red, then something else entirely, something Calla couldn't quite read. "What the hell are you doing?" His voice was low, rough, almost a growl. Calla blinked, still clutching the babies. There was no one here. They were crying, I thought. His eyes locked onto the blanket. The blue one, the one with the frayed edges and the faint scent of lavender. His jaw tightened. "Where did you get that?" "What, the blanket?" He took a step closer, his gaze sharp, almost accusing. "Where did you get it?" Calla's mouth went dry. It's mine. It was a gift from a neighbor." That's not possible," his voice cracked. "Just a little." He reached out and touched the blanket, his fingers trembling. "Violet made this. My wife. She's dead." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and strange. Calla didn't know what to say. She just stood there, holding his children, wrapped in a blanket that somehow belonged to a woman she'd never met. "I'm sorry," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know, they were trapped. They were so hot I couldn't just..." Ronan wasn't listening. He took the babies from her arms one at a time. his movements careful but stiff, like he was afraid they might break, or like he was afraid she might disappear with them. He didn't say thank you, he didn't say anything. He just turned and walked toward the restaurant, the baby's quiet now against his chest. Calla stood there in the parking lot, her arms suddenly empty, her heart still pounding. She looked back at the car. The door was still open, the alarm finally silent. And then she saw, just barely out of the corner of her eye, the security camera mounted on the lamppost, the one that was always broken, always covered by a peeling poster advertising a concert from 3 years ago. The little green light was blinking. Someone had been recording. She swallowed hard and turned back toward the restaurant, her sneakers squelching against the wet asphalt. Inside, she could see Ronan through the window, sitting at a booth, the babies in his arms, and standing behind the counter, watching everything with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, was Blair Lockridge. Calla's stomach twisted. Blair was her manager. The woman who ran the Luna de Back Bay like it was her personal kingdom. She controlled the shifts, the tips, the mood of the place. And she'd never liked Calla, not from day one, but right now. Blair wasn't looking at Calla, she was looking at Ronan, and that smile, that cold, calculating smile made Calla's skin crawl. Something was wrong. She didn't know what. Not yet. But she could feel it, the way you feel a storm coming before the first drop of rain falls. She walked inside, the door chime sounding too loud in the sudden quiet. Blair glanced her way, her smile widening just a fraction. "Long shift, Calla," she said sweetly. "You look exhausted. Why don't you head home?" It wasn't a suggestion. It was an order. Calla nodded, grabbed her bag from the back, and left. But as she walked out into the humid evening, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just stepped into something she didn't understand, something that was going to change everything. Behind her, the security camera blinked its little green light, recording everything. The walk home was always the same 10 blocks of cracked sidewalks, street lights that flickered more than they shone, and the constant hum of the city that never quite went quiet. Calla's feet ached, her uniform clung to her skin, and her mind wouldn't stop replaying the look on Ronan Fairfax's face when he'd seen that blanket. "Where did you get that?" She turned the corner onto Tremont Street, passing the bodega where Mr. Pell always waved through the window, and the laundromat that smelled like dryer sheets and broken dreams. Home was a third-floor walk-up, with paint peeling off the walls, and a landlord who only answered his phone when rent was late. But it was hers, sort of. She climbed the stairs slowly, each step a reminder of how bone-tired she was inside. The apartment was dark except for the glow of the TV. Her mom was asleep in the recliner. Oxygen tube in her nose, a rerun of some old game show playing at low volume. Calla stood there for a moment, watching her chest rise and fall, and felt that familiar knot in her stomach, the one that never quite went away. She covered her mom with the throw blanket from the couch, turned off the TV, and collapsed onto her own bed without bothering to change. Sleep didn't come easy. It never did. Instead, her mind drifted back, way back, to when she was 14 and still believed that doing the right thing actually mattered. She'd been babysitting for the Caldwells, a rich family in Beacon Hill with a brownstone that had marble floors and a chandelier in the foyer. Mrs. Caldwell wore pearls even on Tuesdays and smelled like expensive perfume. Mr. Caldwell barely looked at Calla when he handed her cash at the end of the night. Okay. Their daughter, Emma, was 7 and sweet in that way kids are when they don't know yet that the world can be cruel. Calla had loved that job. It paid better than anything else she could find, and Emma actually liked her. They'd play dress-up, read stories, make pillow forts in the living room. Then one day, Mrs. Caldwell's diamond bracelet went missing. Calla still remembered the way Mrs. Caldwell had looked at her, not angry exactly. Worse, disappointed, like she'd expected this all along. "I'm not saying you took it, Calla," she'd said, her voice dripping with false kindness, "but you were the only one here yesterday, and now it's gone." Calla had tried to explain. She hadn't touched anything. She didn't even go into Mrs. Caldwell's room, but it didn't matter. The bracelet turned up a week later, fallen behind the dresser, but by then, Calla had already been let go. No apology, no explanation, just a quiet dismissal and a check for the last week's work. The shame had stuck to her like rust. People talked, word got around. For months afterward, no one would hire her, not for babysitting, not for anything. She was the girl who probably stole something, the girl you couldn't trust. That's when she learned it didn't matter if you were innocent. If people decided you were guilty, you were guilty. And now, 14 years later, standing in that parking lot with 2 babies in her arms, she'd felt it again. that look, that suspicion. She must have dozed off because when she opened her eyes, sunlight was streaming through the thin curtains and her phone was buzzing on the nightstand. She grabbed it, squinting at the screen. Blair Lockridge, need you in early today, 10 a.m. sharp, don't be late. Calla groaned and dragged herself out of bed. Her mom was already awake, shuffling around the kitchen in her slippers. Humming softly, "Morning, baby," she said, pouring coffee into 2 chipped mugs. "You got in late." "Double shift," Calla said, accepting the coffee gratefully. And then something weird happened. Her mom raised an eyebrow. Weird how Calla told her about the babies, the car, the blanket. Her mom listened, nodding slowly, her expression unreadable. "You did the right thing," she said finally. "Don't ever doubt that." Calla wanted to believe her, but the knot in her stomach said otherwise. By the time she got to the Luna de Back Bay, the morning rush was already in full swing. The place smelled like burnt toast and cheap coffee, and the usual crowd of regulars filled the booth's construction workers. Nurses coming off night shifts, college kids nursing hangovers. Blair was behind the counter, her smile sharp as ever. She was in her mid-30s, blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. Makeup flawless even at 10 in the morning. She had that look about her like she'd clawed her way up from nothing and wasn't about to let anyone forget it. "Calla," she said sweetly. "Glad you could make it." "You said 10. It's 10. Mm-hmm." Blair's smile didn't waver. "So, about yesterday." Calla's stomach dropped. "What about it?" "You know what I'm talking about. The Fairfax babies." Blair leaned in, lowering her voice. "That was quite the scene. They were trapped. I had to what?" "Exactly." Blair's tone was still sweet, but there was something cold underneath. Break into someone's car, touch their children without permission. Do you have any idea who Ronan Fairfax is? I know who he is. But those babies could have been fine. Maybe the AC was on a timer. Maybe he was coming right back. But you didn't think about that, did you? You just saw an opportunity. Calla blinked. An opportunity for what? Blair straightened, smoothing down her apron. "I'm just saying, Calla, people might get the wrong idea. Rich guy, desperate waitress. It's a story that writes itself, don't you think?" The knot in Calla's stomach tightened into something hard and cold. "I wasn't trying to. Of course you weren't." Blair's smile was back, wide and false. "I'm just looking out for you. This place, it's a small world, and Mr. Fairfax, well, he's been a very good client of ours. We cater his events, big contracts, very lucrative. It would be a shame if something complicated that relationship." Calla stared at her, trying to read between the lines. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying be careful." Blair handed her a tray. "Table 6 needs refills." And Calla, "Try to stay out of trouble." She walked away, leaving Calla standing there with the tray in her hands and a sinking feeling that she'd just been warned. The rest of the shift passed in a blur. Calla kept her head down, refilled coffee, took orders, smiled when she was supposed to. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The way Blair kept glancing at her, the way some of the other waitresses whispered when she walked by at lunch. She grabbed her bag from the back and found something that hadn't been there before. A gold earring, expensive looking, definitely not hers. She held it up, confused, and turned to Jenny, one of the other waitresses. "Is this yours?" Jenny glanced at it and shook her head. "Nope, never seen it before." Calla frowned and shoved it back in her bag. Probably just something a customer dropped. She'd turn it in to lost and found later, but when she looked up, Blair was watching her from across the room, that same cold smile on her face. And for the first time since yesterday, Calla felt truly afraid. It started small, little things. The kind of things you could almost convince yourself were coincidence. On Tuesday, Calla's order pad went missing. She found it 20 minutes later in the trash, coffee-stained and crumpled. "Clumsy me," she muttered, fishing it out while Blair watched from the counter with that thin smile. On Wednesday, a customer, a man in a suit Calla had never seen before, complained that his eggs were cold. When she brought them back to the kitchen, Marcus, the line cook, swore he'd just plated them, hot off the grill. But the customer insisted, loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear. Blair comped his meal and pulled Calla aside. "Quality control, Calla. We can't afford mistakes like that." "But I didn't. I know you're trying. But maybe you're stretched too thin, all those double shifts catching up with you." It wasn't a question, it was a warning. By Thursday, the whispers had started. Calla could feel them every time she walked through the dining room, eyes following her, voices dropping to murmurs. Ginny wouldn't meet her gaze anymore. Even Marcus seemed distant, distracted, and then Friday came. Calla arrived at 8 for the morning shift, tied on her apron, and headed to her locker in the back. She spun the combination, the 7th of December 34, same as always, and pulled open the door. The gold earring was still there, right where she'd left it. Except now, there was a matching one beside it. Her stomach dropped. She picked them up, turning them over in her palm. They were heavy, real gold, with tiny diamonds embedded in the setting. Expensive, way too expensive for someone like her to own. Calla, she spun around. Blair stood in the doorway. Arms crossed, head tilted like she was trying to solve a puzzle. Everything okay? Yeah, fine. Calla shoved the earrings into her pocket. Just found something in my locker. Oh, Blair's eyebrows lifted. What kind of something? Nothing. Just lost and found stuff. Blair's smile widened. Well, if you find anything that doesn't belong to you, make sure to turn it in. We've had some complaints lately. Things going missing. Calla's mouth went dry. Missing. A regular said. She left her earrings on the table last week, gold with diamonds, never saw them again. Blair sighed, shaking her head. It's such a shame. People work hard for nice things. Calla felt the weight of the earrings in her pocket like stones. I'll keep an eye out, I'm sure you will. Blair turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Calla, corporate's doing random locker inspections this week. Just routine, nothing to worry about. She left, her heels clicking down the hallway. Calla stood frozen, heart pounding. Random inspections, right? She pulled the earrings out of her pocket and stared at them. How the hell did they get in her locker? She didn't take them. She didn't take anything. But it didn't matter. She knew how this worked. She'd lived through it before. The inspection happened during lunch rush. Calla was in the middle of taking an order table 9, 2 cheeseburgers and a Caesar salad, when Blair appeared at her elbow. Calla, can I see you in the back just for a minute? The customer glanced between them. Sensing tension, Calla forced a smile. I'll be right back with that. In the back. 3 people were waiting. Blair, Mr. Russo, the owner, and a man in a cheap suit holding a clipboard. Security consultant, Blair explained. Just making sure everything was up to code. We're checking all the lockers, Mr. Russo said, not unkindly. He was old, tired looking. The kind of guy who'd rather be on a golf course than dealing with restaurant drama. Shouldn't take long. Calla's locker was 3rd. The consultant opened it with a master key, rummaged through her thin spare shirt, deodorant, a protein bar, then pulled out the pocket of her bag. The earrings tumbled into his palm. Silence. What's this? He asked. Holding them up, Calla's throat closed. I found them. I was going to turn them in. Blair stepped forward, eyes wide with perfectly performed shock. Oh my God, Mrs. Chun's earrings, Calla. What are you doing with these? I found them. In my locker. I don't know how they got there. In your locker, the consultant raised an eyebrow, and you didn't think to report it immediately. This is serious, Calla. Mr. Russo looked pained. Theft is a fireable offense. I didn't steal anything, her voice cracked. Desperate, someone put them there. I swear, Blair sighed, a sound of deep disappointment. Calla, honey, I want to believe you, but this isn't the first complaint we've had. Remember the customer with the cold eggs? He also said his wallet felt lighter when he left. That's not true. And just yesterday, someone reported missing cash from the register during your shift. Calla felt the walls closing in. I didn't touch the register. You can check the cameras. We did, Blair said softly. There's footage of you near the register. Alone, it was a lie. It had to be. But Calla could see it in their faces. They'd already decided. Just like the Caldwells, just like everyone. I'm writing you up, Mr. Russo said finally. Consider this a formal warning. One more incident, Calla, and you're done. Understood, she nodded, numb. The consultant handed the earrings to Blair, who slipped them into a plastic bag like evidence as they filed out. Blair lingered, lowering her voice so only Calla could hear. You should have stayed in your lane, sweetheart. Playing hero never ends well for people like you. Then she was gone. The rest of the shift was a nightmare. Word spread fast. By 2 o'clock, everyone knew. Jenny avoided her. Marcus muttered something about bad vibes when she dropped off an order. Even the regulars looked at her differently, like she was something dirty they didn't want to touch. At 4, Calla's phone buzzed. Unknown number. Saw what happened. Be careful, they're building a case. Now she stared at the message. Heart racing. L. Who the hell was L? She typed back. Who is this? No response. She shoved the phone in her pocket and finished her shift in silence. When she clocked out, Blair was waiting by the time clock, holding a manila folder. For you, she said. Handing it over, copy of your write-up, and a reminder. You're scheduled for a meeting with Our next week. Fairfax Events has some questions about your conduct. Calla's blood ran cold. Fairfax Events, they handle our catering contracts, very important clients. And Mr. Fairfax himself requested a review of all staff who've had direct contact with his family. Blair's smile was razor sharp, standard procedure. Nothing personal, everything about this was personal. Calla took the folder, hands shaking, and walked out into the rain. It had started again, soft and cold. Soaking through her uniform, she stood on the sidewalk, clutching the folder, and felt the weight of it all crashing down. She'd saved those babies. She'd done the right thing, and now she was being destroyed for it. Across the street, barely visible through the rain, a security camera blinked its little green light, recording everything. Calla didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, replaying every interaction. Every moment since she'd pulled those babies from the car. Something wasn't adding up. The earrings appearing in her locker, the convenient complaints from customers she'd never had problems with before. Blair's smug smile every time something went wrong. It was too neat, too deliberate. By dawn, she'd made a decision. If they were going to destroy her, she wasn't going down without a fight. Saturday morning, the restaurant was closed for deep cleaning. Calla knew the schedule. Blair always came in around 10 to check inventory. That gave her a window, a small one, but enough. She showed up at 8. Using her key to slip in through the back door, the Luna de Back Bay was eerily quiet without the usual clatter of dishes and hum of conversation. She moved quickly, checking over her shoulder every few seconds. The parking lot, that's where it started. She pushed through the side exit and stepped out into the cool morning air. The asphalt was still damp from last night's rain, and the sedan, Ronan's sedan, was long gone. But Calla wasn't looking for the car. She was looking for anything out of place, anything that might explain what happened. At first there was nothing, just oil stains and cigarette butts and a crushed soda can. Then she saw it wedged under the tire stop where the sedan had been parked. A napkin, white, folded, with the Fairfax Events logo embossed in gold. She picked it up carefully, unfolding it on the inside in neat handwriting. Someone had scrawled, 2:30 p.m. Leave door cracked for ventilation. Calla's heart stopped. Leave the door cracked for ventilation. Those babies hadn't been left by accident. Someone had planned it. Someone had written it down like a grocery list. She folded the napkin and shoved it into her pocket. Mind racing, who would write something like that? And why? Back inside, she moved through the empty restaurant like a ghost. The staff lockers, the break room, the storage closet. Everything looked normal, untouched. Then she passed Blair's office, a small room off the kitchen with a desk, filing cabinet, and a window that overlooked the parking lot. The door was ajar. Calla hesitated. Going through Blair's things was risky. If she got caught, they're already destroying you, she reminded herself. What's a little trespassing compared to that? She slipped inside and closed the door softly behind her. The office smelled like expensive perfume and stale coffee. Blair's desk was meticulously organized, pens in a holder, files stacked in perfect alignment, a laptop closed and centered. Everything had its place. Except the trash can. It was overflowing, crumpled papers spilling over the sides. Blair never let her trash pile up. She was obsessive about appearances, which meant she'd been busy lately, too busy to keep up her usual standards. Calla knelt beside the can and started sifting through receipts, post-it notes, a takeout menu. Nothing useful. Then, at the bottom, she found a crumpled sheet of paper with the Fairfax Events letterhead. She smoothed it out on the floor. It was a draft proposal, half-finished, with notes scribbled in the margins. The header read, Exclusive Catering Partnership, Fairfax Events and Luna de Back Bay. Below that, a list of terms, payment schedules, and buried in the middle of the page, a clause that made Calla's stomach turn. Publicity clause, in the event of a high-visibility incident involving Fairfax family members. Luna de Back Bay management will coordinate media response to maximize positive brand exposure. High-visibility incident. Coordinate media response. Brand exposure. Calla read it again, the words sinking in like stones. This wasn't just a catering contract. This was a calculated play. Stage an incident, swoop in as the hero, and ride the publicity all the way to a lucrative partnership. But Calla had ruined the plan. She'd saved the babies first, and now Blair was tearing her apart to bury the evidence. She took a photo of the draft with her phone, folded the paper, and tucked it into her pocket next to the napkin. Find what you were looking for. Calla spun around. Blair stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes cold. I was just going through my trash. Blair stepped inside and closed the door behind her. That's a new low, even for you. Calla's pulse hammered. I know what you're doing, do you? Blair's smile was thin. Dangerous. Enlighten me. The babies, the car, you set it up, you left them there for a moment. Blair said nothing. Then she laughed. A sharp, brittle sound. You're insane, you know that. I found the napkin. The one with the instructions. And the contract proposal. Blair's smile faltered. Just for a second. Then it was back, harder than before. You mean the napkin you planted? And a random draft contract that proves nothing. She stepped closer. Who's going to believe you, Calla? A waitress with a history of theft accusations, or me? A manager with 15 years of experience and a spotless record. I didn't steal anything. Not then, not now, doesn't matter. Blair's voice dropped to a whisper. You really think anyone cares about the truth? This is about power, money, connections, and you. You're nothing. A poor girl who got in the way. Calla's hands clenched into fists. Those were babies. You could have killed them, but I didn't. Blair's smile was ice. And if you breathe a word of this to anyone, I'll bury you so deep you'll never dig your way out. The earrings were just the beginning. I've got witnesses lined up, security footage edited, and a paper trail that makes you look like a con artist. Try me. She turned and walked out, leaving Calla alone in the office. Shaking with rage and fear outside, the rain had started again. Calla sat on the curb behind the restaurant, clutching the napkin and the photo on her phone. She had evidence, not much, but something. Proof that Blair had planned it all. But Blair was right. Who would believe her? Her phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. L, check, the parking lot camera, northwest corner. Footage isn't as broken as they think. Calla looked up. The northwest corner where the sedan had been parked. The camera with the peeling concert poster. She stood, heart pounding, and walked back to the parking lot. The camera was still there, perched on the lamppost, the poster covering most of the lens, but the little green light was blinking, active, recording. Or maybe it had been recording all along. She pulled out her phone and typed, "Who are you?" 3 dots appeared. Then, someone who knows the truth. "Meet me tonight, Denny's on Mass Avenue, 11 p.m. Come alone." Calla stared at the message. It could be a trap, another setup, but what choice did she have? She typed back, "I'll be there that night." Calla told her mom she was working late. She caught the bus to Mass Avenue, got off 2 stops early, and walked the rest of the way. Checking over her shoulder every few seconds, Denny's was half empty, fluorescent lights buzzing, the smell of burnt coffee thick in the air. She scanned the booths, looking for she didn't even know what. Then she saw him, an older man, maybe 60, sitting in the corner booth with a cup of coffee and a weathered face. He wore a security uniform with a name tag, Leland Carver. He looked up and nodded once. Calla slid into the booth across from him. "You're Elle," she said. He nodded again. "And you're the girl who saved those kids. You saw what happened." "I see a lot of things." He pushed a flash drive across the table. "This is from the parking lot camera, the real footage, not the edited version Blair's been showing around." Calla picked it up, hands trembling. "What's on it?" Leland leaned back, his expression grim. "Everything. The meeting was scheduled for Monday at 2. Blair called it a team discussion, but when Calla walked into the back dining room and saw the setup, she knew exactly what it was. A tribunal. The tables had been pushed together to form a long rectangle. Blair sat at the head, flanked by Mr. Russo and a man in an expensive suit Calla didn't recognize, probably the lawyer from Fairfax events. On the other side sat Marcus, Jenny, and 2 other waitresses, all looking anywhere but at Calla, and at the far end, arms crossed and face unreadable, sat Ronan Fairfax. Calla's stomach dropped. She hadn't seen him since that day in the parking lot. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes, jaw tight, like he hadn't slept in weeks. When their eyes met, he looked away. "Calla, please sit." Blair gestured to the single, empty chair directly across from her. The hot seat. Calla sat, gripping the edge of the table to keep her hands from shaking. The flash drive Leland had given her was in her pocket, burning like a coal, but she couldn't use it, not yet. Not until she understood what they had on her. "Let's get started." Blair folded her hands, her expression dripping with false sympathy. "Calla, you know why we're here. There have been concerns. Multiple concerns regarding your conduct over the past week." "Concerns," Calla repeated flatly. "Yes." Blair slid a folder across the table. "Documented incidents. A customer complained about cold food, missing cash from the register, and, of course, the stolen earrings found in your locker. I didn't steal those. We also have testimony." Blair continued, speaking over her, from staff members who witnessed suspicious behavior. Jenny shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Marcus stared at his hands. Jenny, Blair prompted. Would you like to share what you told me? Jenny's face flushed. She glanced at Calla, then quickly away. I saw you near the register, alone, and you seemed nervous. I was grabbing receipt tape, Calla said, her voice tight. You were standing right there. You saw me. I saw you hovering, Jenny mumbled. That's all I'm saying. Marcus, Blair turned to the line cook. You had something to add. Marcus cleared his throat. Look, I don't want to make a big deal out of this, but yeah, you've been acting weird, jumpy, and that thing with the earrings. He trailed off. Shaking his head, Calla felt the walls closing in. They were all turning on her, one by one, just like before. And then, Blair said, pulling out another sheet of paper, there's the incident with Mr. Fairfax's vehicle. Ronan's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. You broke into his car, Blair continued. Without permission, you removed his children. They were dying, Calla snapped. Her voice breaking. The windows were cracked an inch. It was 90 degrees. They were screaming. That's not the point. Blair's tone was ice. The point is, you invaded private property. You touched someone else's children without consent. And then she leaned forward, eyes gleaming. You kept a personal item that belonged to Mr. Fairfax's late wife. Calla's breath caught. The blanket, a family heirloom, Blair said smoothly, handmade by Violet Fairfax. And somehow, it ended up in your possession. Care to explain that? I told you. It was given to me by a neighbor. I didn't know. A convenient story. The lawyer interjected, his voice clipped and professional, but without proof. It looks an awful lot like theft, or, at the very least, an attempt to create a connection to Mr. Fairfax for personal gain. Calla's head snapped toward Ronan. You think I staged this? You think I wanted to find your kids trapped in a car? Ronan finally spoke, his voice low and hard. I don't know what to think. All I know is my sons almost died, and you were the only one there. And now you're being accused of theft, lying, and God knows what else. Do you believe them? Calla's voice cracked. You think I'm some kind of con artist? He didn't answer. He just looked away. Blair smiled, sensing victory. Calla, we're not here to destroy you. We're here to give you a chance to come clean. If you admit to what you've done, taking the earrings, fabricating the hero story, we can work something out. Maybe probation instead of termination, maybe no police involvement. And if I don't, Blair's smile widened, then we have no choice but to involve law enforcement, theft, breaking and entering, possibly child endangerment, depending on how Mr. Fairfax wants to proceed. The room went silent. Calla felt every eye on her, waiting for her to break, to confess to crimes she didn't commit just to make it all go away. She thought about the flash drive in her pocket, the footage Leland had given her. But if she played it now, Blair would just spin it, claim it was edited, fake, and without Leland here to back her up. Confess, Blair said softly. It's easier that way. Calla looked around the table. At Jenny, who wouldn't meet her eyes. At Marcus, who looked ashamed but stayed silent. At Mr. Russo, who seemed more interested in protecting his business than finding the truth. At Ronan, whose grief and anger had made him blind. And then at Blair, who sat there with that smug, triumphant smile. No, Calla said. Blair blinked. Excuse me, I said no. Calla stood, her legs trembling but her voice steady. I'm not confessing to something I didn't do. I saved those babies. I didn't steal anything, and if you want to fire me, go ahead. But I'm not giving you the satisfaction of a confession. Blair's smile vanished. Sit down, Calla. No, Calla looked at Ronan. Your sons were left in that car on purpose. Someone wanted them in danger, and I think you know that. I think you've known it all along. But it's easier to blame me than to admit someone you trust set this whole thing up. Ronan's face went pale. What are you talking about? Ask her. Calla pointed at Blair. Ask her why there's a napkin in the parking lot with instructions to leave your car door cracked. Ask her why she's been negotiating a contract with Fairfax Events that includes a clause about high visibility incidents. Ask her why she's so desperate to destroy me. Blair stood, her face flushed with rage. You're insane. You're a liar and a thief, and I will not sit here and then don't. Calla pulled the flash drive from her pocket and slammed it on the table. This is footage from the parking lot camera. The real footage, not whatever edited version you've been showing people. It shows everything. The room went dead silent. Blair stared at the flash drive like it was a live grenade. That's fabricated. She's making this up. Then let's watch it, Calla said. Right now. All of us, mister. Russo reached for the drive, but Blair snatched it first. "This is absurd. I'm not entertaining. Give it to me." Everyone turned. Ronan had stood, his voice cold and commanding. "Give me the drive." "Now," Blair hesitated, her hand trembling. Then, slowly, she set it on the table. Ronan picked it up, his expression unreadable. "If this is real," he said quietly, "if there's even a shred of truth to what she's saying." "I want to see it, Mr. Fairfax," the lawyer began. I don't care what you think." Ronan looked into Calla, and for the first time, there was something other than anger in his eyes. Doubt, maybe even hope. "Where can we watch this?" "My office, mister," Russo said, standing. "I've got a laptop." They filed out Ronan. Mr. Russo, the lawyer, and Calla, Blair, started to follow, but Ronan stopped her. "You stay here." Her face went white. "But stay here." The door closed behind him, leaving Blair alone in the dining room with the rest of the staff. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Calla felt something that almost resembled hope. Mr. Russo's office was cramped, barely room for the four of them to stand around his desk. The air was thick with tension as he plugged the flash drive into his laptop and pulled up the video file. "There are 2 clips here," he said, squinting at the screen. "One from last Thursday, one from the day before. Play Thursday first," Ronan said, his voice tight. "The day it happened, mister." Russo clicked. The screen flickered, then settled into a grainy but clear view of the parking lot. Timestamp 2:17 p.m. The black sedan sat in the center of the frame. Windows barely cracked. Empty lot, no movement. Then, at 2:22, a figure entered from the left side of the screen. Blair. Calla's breath caught. Ronan leaned closer. Blair walked straight to the sedan, glancing over her shoulder twice before pulling out her phone. She held it to her ear, talking to someone while circling the car. Then she reached for the back door handle and opened it. "What the hell is she doing, mister?" Russo muttered. On screen, Blair leaned into the car. Her hand reached toward the dashboard, too far away to see clearly, but the motion was deliberate. Then she grabbed something from the back seat, a bottle, and tossed it onto the floor. The babies weren't visible in the shot, but their muffled cries were faint through the laptop speakers. Blair straightened, closed the door most of the way, leaving it cracked maybe an inch, and walked toward the camera. She paused directly beneath it, looked up, and smiled. Then she reached into her bag, pulled out a rolled poster, and taped it over the lens. The screen went dark for a moment, then the angle shifted slightly, just enough to peek around the edge of the poster. The timestamp jumped to 2:28 p.m. That's when Calla appeared. She ran across the parking lot, arms pumping, face panicked. She reached the car, pressed her hands against the window, then wedged her arm through the gap and unlocked the door. She pulled out the first baby, then the second, wrapping them both in the blue blanket. The footage showed everything, her frantic movements, the way the baby's cries quieted when she held them, the way she rocked them gently, whispering something the camera couldn't pick up. And then Ronan appeared in the frame, running toward her, his face twisted in anger and fear. The video cut off. The office was silent. Ronan stood frozen, staring at the screen. His hands gripped the edge of the desk so hard his knuckles went white. His jaw worked, but no sound came out. "Jesus Christ," Mr. Russo whispered. The lawyer cleared his throat. "Mr. Fairfax." "I play the other one," Ronan said, his voice barely above a whisper. Russo clicked the second file, timestamp, Wednesday, 1:43 p.m. The parking lot again, this time busier. A few cars, a delivery truck in the corner. Blair entered the frame, walking briskly toward the same spot where the sedan would be parked the next day. She stopped, looked around, and pulled out a small notepad. She scribbled something, tore off the page, and tucked it into her pocket. Then she walked to the lamppost, looked up at the camera, and adjusted the already peeling concert poster so it covered more of the lens. Testing. She'd been testing the setup. The video ended. Ronan stepped back from the desk. His breathing ragged, he pressed his palms against his eyes, shoulders shaking. For a moment, Calla thought he might collapse. Then he lowered his hands, and his face was a mask of cold, lethal fury. "She left them there," he said, his voice shaking. She opened the door. She turned off the AC. She threw the bottle on the floor. "She left my sons to die, Mr. Fairfax," the lawyer started. "Don't." Ronan held up a hand. "Don't tell me to calm down. Don't tell me to think this through. I want her arrested. Now, we need to be strategic," the lawyer said carefully. "This footage is damning, but we need to involve the authorities properly. Chain of custody, legal process, I don't give a damn about process. Ronan's voice cracked like a whip. She tried to kill my children. She tried to set you up, Calla said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. She pulled the crumpled napkin from her pocket and placed it on the desk. I found this in the parking lot. Right where your car was parked. It's got the Fairfax Events logo and instructions. Ronan picked it up, his hands trembling. He read it once, twice. Then he crumpled it in his fist. Why? His voice was raw. Why would she do this? Calla pulled out her phone and showed him the photo of the contract proposal. She wanted a partnership with Fairfax Events, a big lucrative contract, and she needed leverage, publicity, a high visibility incident that she could spin into a heroic response. Except I got there first. Ronan stared at the photo, his face going paler with each word he read. She was going to let them die for a contract. No, the lawyer said. Though he didn't sound convinced, she probably intended to discover them herself. Stage a rescue, play the hero. She wouldn't have actually let them. She left them in a car in 90-degree heat with the AC off. Calla snapped. She didn't know when someone would find them. She didn't care. She just needed the story, mister. Russo sank into his chair, looking sick. I had no idea, I swear. I had no idea she was capable of. Where is she? Ronan's voice was ice. Still in the dining room, Mr. Russo said. I can call the police. Do it. Ronan turned to Calla. His eyes were still hard, but something had shifted. You saved them. You actually saved them, and I... His voice broke. I accused you. I let her destroy you. Don't. Calla's throat tightened. Not yet. Let's finish this first. He nodded once, then turned and strode toward the door. Blair was standing when they returned to the dining room, her arms crossed, her expression carefully neutral. But Calla saw the flicker of panic in her eyes when Ronan walked in. Well, Blair said, forcing a smile, I assume you've realized that footage is fake, doctored. She probably paid someone to. Shut up. Blair's mouth snapped shut. Ronan crossed the room slowly, deliberately, until he was standing directly in front of her. You opened my car, he said, his voice low and venomous. You turned off the air conditioning. You left my sons to suffocate. And then you tried to frame the woman who saved them. Blair's face went white. That's ridiculous. I would never. We have you on camera. Ronan pulled out his phone and held it up, showing the paused image of Blair leaning into the sedan. Everything. We have everything. Blair stared at the screen, her mouth opened, closed. Her eyes darted to the door, calculating. Don't, Ronan said softly. Don't even think about running. She didn't run. Instead, she straightened, her expression hardening into something cold and defiant. You can't prove intent. I was checking on them, making sure they were safe by turning off the AC, Calla said. It was malfunctioning. I was trying to help by throwing a bottle on the floor and leaving the door cracked. Blair's jaw tightened. You have no idea what it's like scraping by. Watching people like him, she jabbed a finger at Ronan, walk around like they own the world while the rest of us beg for scraps. I worked my ass off for 15 years, and for what? To serve eggs to entitled pricks who don't even see me. So you decided to use my children as props. Ronan's voice was shaking. You were willing to let them die for a contract. They weren't going to die, Blair snapped. I timed it. Someone would have found them. I would have found them. And then Fairfax Events would have owed me. I'd finally have leverage. She stopped, realizing she'd said too much. Silence. You're insane, Jenny whispered from the corner. Blair laughed, bitter and sharp. I'm practical, and if this little waitress hadn't stuck her nose where it didn't belong, none of you would have known the difference. The door opened. 2 police officers stepped inside, summoned by Mr. Russo's call. They looked between Blair and Ronan, taking in the scene. We got a call about an incident, one of them said. Ronan handed over the flash drive. This woman endangered my children. It's all on video. I want her arrested. Blair's defiance cracked. Wait, we can work this out, Mr. Fairfax. Please, I didn't mean, ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us, the officer said, stepping forward. Blair looked around the room at Mr. Russo, who wouldn't meet her eyes, at the staff, who shrank back, at Calla, who stood silent and still. This isn't over, Blair hissed as the officer cuffed her. You think you've won? You're still nothing. You'll always be nothing. Calla didn't respond. She just watched as they led Blair out, her heels clicking one last time against the tile floor. And then she was gone. The restaurant emptied slowly after the police left. Jenny and Marcus slipped out without a word. Avoiding Calla's eyes, Mr. Russo muttered something about needing to call his lawyer, and disappeared into his office. The lawyer from Fairfax Events gathered his briefcase and left with a curt nod. That left Calla and Ronan standing in the dining room, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the weight of everything that had just happened settling between them like fog. Ronan ran a hand through his hair, exhaling slowly. "I owe you an apology. You don't have to." "Yes, I do." He looked at her. Really looked at her. And Calla saw the exhaustion carved into every line of his face. "I accused you. I let her poison my judgment. I was so angry about almost losing them that I couldn't see what was right in front of me." He paused. "You saved my sons, and I treated you like a criminal." Calla's throat tightened. "You were scared. Any parent would have been. That's not an excuse." He shook his head. "I should have listened. I should have asked questions instead of assuming the worst." He looked down at his hands. "Violet always said I had a problem with that. Jumping to conclusions, letting my anger make decisions for me." The mention of his wife hung in the air. Calla shifted, unsure of what to say. "The blanket," she said finally. "The blue one. I really didn't know it was hers. My neighbor, Mrs. Callahan. She passed away last year and left me a box of things. That blanket was in it." Ronan's expression softened. "Mrs. Callahan, Irish woman, lived on Tremont." Calla nodded, surprised. "You knew her?" "Violet did. They volunteered together at a women's shelter. Mrs. Callahan helped with donations." He smiled faintly. "Violet made dozens of blankets for the kids there. That one," he gestured toward Kayla's bag, "is where the blanket was folded. Was supposed to be for our boys, but she finished it a week before she died. I couldn't look at it, so I gave it to the shelter. Mrs. Callahan must have kept it." Calla felt something crack open in her chest. "I'm sorry." "For your loss," Ronan nodded, his jaw tight. "It's been 2 years. You'd think it would get easier." He laughed. But there was no humor in it. "It doesn't." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Ronan straightened, squaring his shoulders. "I need to make this right. What Blair did to you. The accusations. The setup. All of it. I'm gonna fix it. You don't have to. I do." His voice was firm. "You are fired. Humiliated. She tried to destroy your life because you got in the way of her scheme. That's on me. If I hadn't been so blind, so quick to believe her, none of this would have happened. You didn't know. I should have." He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling Mr. Russo. You're getting your job back with a raise. And a formal apology from everyone involved." Calla opened her mouth to protest, but the look on his face stopped her. This wasn't about charity. It was about justice. About making things right, okay? She said quietly. "Thank you." An hour later, Calla was back in Mr. Russo's office this time. The atmosphere was completely different. Mr. Russo sat behind his desk, looking like he'd aged 10 years in the past 2 hours. Ronan stood by the window, arms crossed, and Calla sat in the chair she'd occupied earlier. Only now she wasn't the one on trial. "Calla," Mr. Russo began, his voice heavy, "I owe you an apology. A big one. I should have investigated properly before letting Blair run that circus. I let her manipulate the situation, and I let you take the fall for something you didn't do. That was wrong. Completely wrong. I appreciate that," Calla said carefully. "I'm reinstating you immediately. Full back pay for the days you missed, and a 20% raise." He slid a piece of paper across the desk, effective immediately. Calla stared at the paper. 20%, that was. More than she'd ever made. Enough to actually get ahead for once. "There's more," Ronan said, turning from the window. "I'm terminating the catering contract between Luna de Back Bay and Fairfax Events. Effective immediately." Mr. Russo winced but nodded. "Understood. And I'm issuing a public statement," Ronan continued. "It's clarifying what happened. Making it clear that you acted heroically and that the accusations against you were false and malicious." He paused. "I'll also be pursuing legal action against Blair Lockridge for child endangerment, fraud, and attempted defamation. My lawyers are already working on it." Calla's head spun. "That's a lot." "It's not enough," Ronan said quietly, "but it's a start." Mr. Russo cleared his throat. "Calla, if you want your job back, it's yours, but I'd understand if you didn't. After everything that's happened, I'll stay," Calla said. She needed the money, and despite everything, the Luna de Back Bay was familiar. It was hers. But I want things to change. No more favoritism, no more covering up complaints. If something's wrong, it gets addressed properly." Mr. Russo nodded quickly. "Agreed, completely agreed." Ronan pulled an envelope from his jacket and set it on the desk. "This is separate from the restaurant. A personal thank you for saving my sons." Calla looked at the envelope but didn't touch it. "I don't want money for doing the right thing." "It's not payment," Ronan said. "It's gratitude. Please Please, take it. She hesitated, then picked it up. Inside was a check. Her eyes widened. $10,000. I can't. You can. And you will. His voice left no room for argument. Use it however you need. Medical bills, rent, whatever. Calla's hands shook. $10,000. That was months of breathing room, maybe even enough to get her mom better care. She looked up at Ronan, tears pricking her eyes. Thank you, he nodded. It's the least I can do. They left the office together. Stepping out into the cool evening air, the parking lot was nearly empty now. Just a few scattered cars under the dim streetlights. Calla paused, looking at the spot where the sedan had been parked, where everything had started. Can I ask you something, Ronan said. Sure. Why did you do it? Risk everything to save 2 kids you didn't know. Calla thought for a moment. Because they needed help, and I could help them. It wasn't really a choice. Ronan studied her. His expression, unreadable. Most people wouldn't have done what you did. They would have called someone, waited for the parents. Covered their own ass, maybe. Calla shrugged. But I've spent my whole life being invisible, being the person people look past, and I got used to it. But when I heard those babies crying, she trailed off. Searching for the right words, I couldn't be invisible anymore. I had to do something. Ronan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Violet would have liked you. Calla blinked, surprised. Yeah, he smiled faintly. She had this thing about people. She said you could tell someone's character by what they do when no one's watching. When there's no reward, no recognition, just need and the choice to help or walk away. He looked at Calla. You helped, even when it cost you everything. I didn't lose everything, Calla said softly. I'm still here. You are. Ronan extended his hand. Thank you. Calla, for my sons, for refusing to give up. For everything. She shook his hand, his grip firm and warm. You're welcome. Later that night, Calla sat on her apartment's fire escape, the city humming below. The check was folded in her pocket. The blue blanket draped over her shoulders. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. L. Heard it went well. Glad he could help. Stay strong, kid, she smiled and typed back. Thank you for everything. No response. But she didn't need one. Below, the streetlights flickered. A siren wailed in the distance. The world kept spinning. Indifferent and relentless. But for the first time in, as long as she could remember, Calla felt like she could breathe. Justice had been done. The truth had won. And maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. The story broke Tuesday morning. Calla was pouring coffee for a regular when her phone started buzzing nonstop. Text after text, calls from numbers she didn't recognize. She excused herself, stepped into the back hallway, and opened her news app. The headline hit her like a punch to the gut. Back Bay restaurant manager arrested for child endangerment. Millionaire's sons left in hot car as part of alleged publicity scheme below it. A photo of Blair being led out of the police station in handcuffs. Her face twisted in rage, and next to that, a statement from Ronan Fairfax. Calla's hands trembled as she read. Last week, my twin sons were deliberately placed in danger by Blair Lockridge, former manager of Luna de Back Bay, as part of a calculated scheme to secure business contracts through manufactured heroism. Were it not for the quick thinking and bravery of Calla Whitmore, a restaurant employee who risked her own safety to save my children, this story would have ended in tragedy. Ms. Whitmore was subsequently subjected to false accusations, workplace harassment, and defamation orchestrated by Ms. Lockridge in an attempt to cover up her actions. I take full responsibility for not recognizing the truth sooner and for allowing an innocent woman to suffer unjustly. Miss Lockridge has been arrested and charged with child endangerment, fraud, and conspiracy. I will be pursuing all legal avenues to ensure she is held fully accountable. I also want to publicly thank Miss Whitmore for her courage and integrity. She is a hero in every sense of the word. Calla lowered her phone, her chest tight. Hero. The word felt strange, too big. She'd just done what anyone should do, hadn't she, Calla? She looked up. Jenny stood in the doorway, wringing her hands. Can we talk? Calla nodded slowly and followed her into the break room. Marcus was already there, sitting at the table with his head in his hands. When he saw Calla, he stood. I'm sorry, he said immediately. I'm so sorry. I should have stood up for you. I knew something was off. But I was scared. Scared of Blair, scared of losing my job. He looked down. That's not an excuse. I was a coward. Jenny nodded, her eyes red. Me too. I saw her messing with your locker. I saw her planting that earring, and I didn't say anything. I just let it happen. Her voice cracked. I'm so sorry, Calla. Calla stood there, unsure of what to say. Part of her wanted to scream at them, to tell them how alone she'd felt, how humiliating it was to be accused, judged, dismissed. But another part of her, tired and worn, just wanted it to be over. Why didn't you say something? She asked quietly. Even after I was fired, why didn't you come forward? Fear, Marcus said. Pure fear. Blair had dirt on everyone. She knew about my DUI 3 years ago, threatened to tell Mr. Russo if I didn't play along. Jenny wiped her eyes. She knew I was behind on rent. Said she'd make sure I got evicted if I didn't back her up. She looked at Calla. I'm not saying that makes it okay. It doesn't. But I was scared. Calla exhaled slowly. Fear. She understood fear. She'd lived with it her whole life. You should have done the right thing anyway, she said. Fear doesn't excuse betrayal, I know, Jenny whispered. I know, Marcus echoed. Calla looked at them both. These people she'd worked beside for months. Shared shifts with, laughed with, they weren't evil. They were just weak, and weakness, she was learning, could be just as damaging as cruelty. Apology accepted, she said finally, but it's going to take time. Trust isn't something you rebuild overnight. They nodded, relief washing over their faces. Thank you, Jenny said, for giving us a chance. Calla shrugged. We all make mistakes. What matters is what you do after. By Wednesday, the story had exploded. Local news picked it up. Then, national outlets. Waitress saves babies. Gets framed by boss played on loop across every channel. Reporters camped outside the Luna de Back Bay trying to get interviews. Mr. Russo hired security to keep them out. Calla stayed in the kitchen. Avoiding the cameras, she didn't want attention. Didn't want to be a story. She just wanted her life back. But the world had other plans. Ronan called her Thursday afternoon. Can you meet me? There's something I want to discuss. She met him at a cafe 2 blocks from the restaurant. He was already there, sitting in a corner booth with 2 cups of coffee. He looked better than he had on Monday, less haggard, more focused. But there was still something heavy in his eyes. Thank you for coming, he said as she slid into the booth. Of course, she wrapped her hands around the warm mug. What's up? He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. The charges against Blair are sticking. The DA is taking it seriously. But there's something else. He pulled out a folder and set it on the table. Blair's lawyer is trying to negotiate a plea deal. Reduced sentence in exchange for testimony about other incidents. Calla frowned. Other incidents. Turns out this wasn't her first scheme. She's been running scams like this for years. Smaller scale, nothing this dangerous, but a pattern of manipulation and fraud. The police are building a case. He paused. They're going to need you to testify about what happened, what she did to you. Calla's stomach twisted. Testify like in court, most likely, unless she takes the plea deal. He looked at her. I know it's asking a lot, but your testimony could be what seals the case. Proves intent and pattern of behavior. She stared at her coffee, thinking. Testifying meant reliving everything, facing Blair again, being cross-examined, questioned, doubted. It meant making herself vulnerable all over again. But it also meant justice, real justice. I'll do it, she said. Ronan's shoulders relaxed. Thank you, but I have a condition. He raised an eyebrow. What is it? I want you to tell me about Violet. He blinked, surprised. Violet. Yeah, Calla leaned forward. You mentioned she volunteered, that she made blankets for kids. I want to know more about her. About what she cared about. Ronan was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, a real smile, sad but genuine. She cared about the forgotten ones, the kids nobody saw. She used to say that every child deserves someone who shows up for them, no matter what. He looked at Calla. She started a foundation. Haven. It was supposed to support at-risk kids, provide resources, safe spaces, advocacy. But she died before it could get off the ground. What happened to it? Nothing. I couldn't finish it without her. He looked down every time I tried. I just saw her, heard her voice. It was too much. Calla reached across the table and touched his hand. Maybe it's time to try again. He looked up, eyes glistening. Maybe. Friday brought more news. Blair's lawyer had rejected the plea deal. She was going to trial, and the media frenzy intensified. Calla's face was everywhere. Photos from her social media. Clips of her entering and leaving the restaurant. Interviews with people she'd gone to high school with. Her mom called panicked. Baby, are you okay? I'm seeing your face on TV. I'm fine, Mama. I promise. They're calling you a hero. Calla laughed. Though it came out shaky. I'm just a waitress who did what anyone should have done. No, her mom said firmly. You're my daughter, and you've always had the biggest heart. Don't let them make you small. Calla's throat tightened. I won't. Saturday, Mr. Russo called a staff meeting. Everyone gathered in the dining room. Waitresses, cooks, dishwashers, the whole crew. Calla stood near the back, arms crossed. Mr. Russo cleared his throat. I want to start by saying this publicly. Calla Whitmore is a hero. She saved 2 lives and was punished for it. That should never have happened, and it will never happen again. He looked around the room. We're implementing new policies, open door reporting for any concerns, third-party oversight for complaints, and 0 tolerance for retaliation or harassment. He turned to Calla. I hope you'll stay, but I understand if you don't. Calla thought about leaving, starting fresh somewhere else. But the lunatic back bay was hers too. She'd earned her place here. I'll stay, she said, but I'm holding you to those policies. Deal, mister. Russo extended his hand. She shook it, and when the staff applauded, awkwardly at first, then louder, she felt something shift. Not forgiveness exactly, but possibility. Justice was slow, messy, imperfect, but it was happening. 3 weeks after Blair's arrest, Ronan called Calla again. Can you come by my place? He asked. There's something I want to show you. She hesitated. His place. That meant stepping into his world, the world of marble floors and chandeliers, the world where people like her were usually invisible. But his voice sounded different, lighter, somehow, hopeful. Okay, she said. When? Tomorrow. Around 10, I'll be there. The Fairfax brownstone was in Beacon Hill, all red brick and black shutters, with window boxes overflowing with late summer flowers. Calla stood on the front step, suddenly very aware of her thrift store jeans and worn sneakers. She almost turned around, almost walked away. Then the door opened. Ronan stood there in jeans and a faded Boston College t-shirt, barefoot, holding one of the twins on his hip. The baby, she still couldn't tell them apart, grabbed at his father's collar and babbled something incomprehensible. Hey, Ronan said. Smiling, come in. She stepped inside. The house was beautiful, but lived. Toys scattered across the hardwood floor. A half-empty coffee mug on the side table, baby blankets draped over the couch. It didn't feel like a museum. It felt like a home. This is Oliver, Ronan said, bouncing the baby gently. Or Owen, honestly, even I get confused sometimes, Calla laughed. How do you tell them apart? Oliver has a birthmark behind his left ear. Owen doesn't. He set the baby down on a playmat, where the other twin was already gnawing on a stuffed elephant. But half the time I just guess and hope I'm right. They walked through the house past family photos on the walls. A kitchen that smelled like banana and coffee, a sunroom filled with plants, and stopped at a closed door at the end of the hall. Ronan paused, his hand on the knob. I haven't opened this in 2 years, he said quietly. Not since she died. Calla's chest tightened. We don't have to. No. I want to. He turned the knob and pushed the door open. It was an office, or it had been. Now it looked more like a shrine. The desk was covered in notebooks, sketches, folders labeled with neat handwriting. The walls were lined with corkboards, photos of kids, newspaper clippings about foster care reform, pamphlets about child advocacy in the corner. A sewing machine sat beneath a pile of unfinished blankets. This was Violet's space, Ronan said, stepping inside. She spent hours in here, planning, organizing, dreaming. He ran his hand along the desk. Haven was her life's work. She wanted to build something that would outlast her, something that would actually help. Calla walked to the corkboard, studying the photos, kids of all ages, all backgrounds, some smiling, some not. All of them looking for something: safety, stability, hope. What was the plan? She asked. A network, Ronan said. Resources for at-risk kids. After-school programs, mentorship, emergency housing. She wanted to create a place where kids who fell through the cracks could find support. No judgment, no bureaucracy, just help, he sighed. She had investors lined up. A location picked out, then she got sick, and 6 months later, she was gone. Why didn't you finish it? I tried. He sat on the edge of the desk. I really did. But every time I looked at these plans, all I saw was her. Her handwriting, her passion, her voice. He shook his head. I couldn't do it without her. It felt wrong, like I'd be erasing her if I changed anything. Calla picked up one of the notebooks and flipped through it. Page after page of meticulous notes, budgets, timelines, partnership proposals, and on the last page, a quote written in purple ink. The world is changed by your example, not your opinion. She believed that, Ronan said. Watching her, that real change comes from action, from showing up. He looked at Calla. Like you did. Calla set the notebook down carefully. Why are you showing me this? Ronan stood and crossed to the sewing machine. He pulled out a box from beneath it and opened it. Inside were dozens of blankets, blue, pink, yellow, green, all handmade, all unfinished. She made these for Haven, he said, for the kids. She wanted every child who came through to have something soft, something that was theirs. He picked up a blue one, identical to the one Calla had used to wrap the twins. I gave most of them away after she died, couldn't stand looking at them, but I kept a few, and now, he handed the blanket to Calla. I think I'm ready to finish what she started. Calla's breath caught. You're reopening Haven. I'm starting Haven, he corrected. For real this time, not just on paper, a physical space, programs, staff, everything Violet wanted. He paused, and I want you to be part of it. Calla blinked. Me, you, Ronan pulled out a folder and handed it to her. I've been working with a team. Lawyers, accountants, child welfare experts. We're setting up a facility in Dorchester. It'll have a play center, tutoring rooms, a small clinic, but the heart of it is going to be the children's space. A safe place where kids can just be kids. He opened the folder. Inside were architectural plans, staffing proposals, and right in the middle, a job description. Children's Program Coordinator, Haven Foundation. Calla stared at it, her heart pounding. You want me to run the children's program? I want you to build it, Ronan said. Design it, staff it, make it what you think it should be. You have instincts with kids. You see them, really see them. That's what Haven needs, but I'm not qualified. I don't have a degree in social work or education, or you have something better. Ronan's voice was firm. You have heart and experience. You know what it's like to be overlooked, to fight for every inch. That's the perspective we need. Calla looked down at the job description. The salary was more than double what she made at the restaurant. Benefits, real benefits, insurance for her mom, stability. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Ronan smiled. Violet wrote something in her last letter to me. I found it a few weeks ago. Tucked in one of these notebooks, he pulled out a folded piece of paper and handed it to her. Calla unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was shaky, written near the end. If I'm gone before this dream comes true, promise me you'll find someone who understands the silence of loss and the courage to begin again. Someone who knows what it means to be unseen, but refuses to be invisible. That person will carry this forward better than I ever could. Calla's eyes blurred. She wrote this before she died, 2 weeks before. Ronan's voice was rough. I didn't understand it then, but I do now. He looked at her. She was describing you. Calla wiped her eyes, overwhelmed. I don't know if I'm that person. You are. Ronan placed a hand on her shoulder. You saved my sons when no one else was there. You fought for the truth when everyone turned against you. You refused to be invisible. That's exactly who Violet was talking about. Calla looked around the room at the corkboards filled with hope, the notebooks filled with dreams, the blankets waiting to be given away. She thought about her mom, struggling to breathe, about the kids in those photos, looking for someone to show up, about Violet who'd believed in action over opinion. Okay, she said, her voice steady. I'll do it. Ronan's face broke into a genuine smile, the first real one she'd seen from him. Thank you, but I have conditions, he laughed. Of course you do. First, my mom gets full medical coverage through the foundation. Done. Second, I want to hire people who've been through the system, former foster kids, people who know what these kids are facing, absolutely. And third, she held up the blue blanket. Every kid who comes through Haven gets one of these. And if we run out, I'm learning to sew. Ronan's eyes glistened. Violet would have loved that. Then it's a deal. They shook hands. And for the first time in weeks, maybe years, Calla felt something she'd almost forgotten. Hope. Downstairs, the twins were still playing, babbling to each other in their secret language. Calla knelt beside them, and Oliver, Ullman, immediately crawled over and grabbed her finger with surprising strength. They remember you, Ronan said softly. You think so? I know so. He sat on the floor beside her. Kids know who shows up for them. They don't forget. Calla looked at the baby holding her finger. His big eyes trusting and bright. I won't let them down, she said. Any of them, I know you won't. Outside, the late afternoon sun streamed through the windows, warm and golden. And for the first time since that rain-soaked day in the parking lot, everything felt like it might actually be okay. 6 weeks later, the Haven Foundation opened its doors. The building in Dorchester wasn't fancy, a renovated community center with fresh paint, new floors, and windows that actually opened. But it was warm, welcoming, the kind of place that didn't make you feel small for walking through the door. Calla stood in the children's play area, adjusting the last of the bookshelves. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the bright murals on the walls, painted by local artists, depicting kids of every color and background playing, laughing, dreaming in the corner. Bins overflowed with toys. art supplies and games, and draped over every chair, folded on every shelf, were blue blankets, dozens of them, some sewn by Violet years ago, others made by Calla herself, her stitches clumsy but determined. It looks perfect, she turned. Ronan stood in the doorway, the twins toddling beside him. They were walking now, wobbling really, but mobile enough to get into everything. Oliver made a beeline for the toy bin. Owen spotted Calla and shrieked with delight, arms outstretched. She scooped him up, and he immediately grabbed a fistful of her hair. "Hey, buddy, you excited for today?" He babbled something that might have been yes or might have been nonsense. Either way, his smile was answer enough. "First day," Ronan said, looking around. "How are you feeling?" "Terrified," Calla admitted. "What if no one shows up? What if we're not ready? What if it's exactly what these kids need?" Ronan interrupted gently. "Because it is. You made this happen." "Calla, you took Violet's dream and made it real. We made it happen," she corrected. "All of us." It was true. Over the past 6 weeks, a team had come together. Leland Carver had signed on as security coordinator. Turns out he'd worked in child protective services before becoming a security guard and knew the system inside out. Jenny from the restaurant had volunteered as a part-time assistant. Desperate to make amends, a social worker named Keisha had joined as program director, bringing 15 years of experience and a no-nonsense warmth. Marcus had surprised everyone by offering to run a weekly cooking class for the older kids. It wasn't just a building, it was a community. The first family arrived at 9:30, a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a little girl clutching her hand. The girl couldn't have been more than 7, wearing a too-big jacket and sneakers held together with duct tape. Calla crouched down to the girl's level. "Hi there, I'm Calla. What's your name?" The girl looked at her mom, then back at Calla. "Maya," she whispered. "That's a beautiful name." Calla stood and extended a hand to the mother. "Welcome to Haven. I'm the children's coordinator. Come on in." She gave them the tour play area, reading nook, art room, quiet space for homework. Maya's eyes grew wider with each room. When they reached the blanket display, Calla pulled down a soft yellow one. "Every kid who comes here gets one of these," she said, handing it to Maya. "It's yours to keep, no matter what." Maya clutched the blanket like it was made of gold. "Really? Really?" The mother's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she mouthed. By 10 o'clock, more families had arrived. By 11, the play area was full of kids laughing, building block towers, finger painting, reading in corners. Calla moved through the space, learning names, answering questions, wiping tears, celebrating small victories. A boy named Marcus, no relation to the cook, proudly showed her the Lego spaceship he'd built. A teenager named Destiny asked if she could use the computer lab to work on college applications. Twin sisters, barely 5 years old, curled up on a beanbag with matching blue blankets and a picture book. This was what Violet had envisioned. At noon, Ronan found Calla in the art room, helping a kid named Jordan glue together a popular MCH volcano. "Can I steal you for a minute?" he asked. She handed Jordan the glue stick and followed Ronan into the hallway. He led her to a small office at the back of the building, her office. Though she still wasn't used to calling it that, inside a woman was waiting. Mid-50s, silver hair, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Calla, this is Dr. Patricia Nguyen," Ronan said. "She runs the Children's Advocacy Center downtown." "Dr." Nguyen extended her hand. "I've heard a lot about you. And about what you're building here." Calla shook her hand, confused. "Nice to meet you, but I'm not sure." "I want to partner with you, Doctor," Nguyen said. "Our center handles cases of abuse and neglect. We provide medical exams, forensic interviews, therapy, but what we don't have is a place for kids to just be, to play, to heal in a space that doesn't feel clinical." She looked around the office. "Haven could be that place. We could refer families here, provide funding, training, whatever you need." Calla's heart raced. That's incredible. "It's necessary, Doctor," Nguyen said. "What you did, saving those children, fighting for the truth, it resonated with a lot of people. You have credibility, and more importantly, you have heart. Kids need that. So do we have a deal?" Ronan asked, smiling. Calla looked between them. "It's overwhelmed. 6 weeks ago, she'd been a waitress on the edge of losing everything. Now she was running a foundation, partnering with major organizations, building something that mattered." "Yes," she said. "Absolutely, yes." That evening, after the last family left and the building grew quiet, Calla sat on the floor of the play area, surrounded by scattered toys and abandoned art projects. She was exhausted, bone deep, tired, but it was the good kind. The kind that came from purpose. Ronan appeared with 2 cups of coffee and sat beside her. Hell of a first day, she agreed, accepting the cup. 43 kids, 43 kids who have a safe place now. Because of you. She shook her head. Because of Violet. This was her dream, but you made it real. He set down his cup and pulled something from his jacket pocket. An envelope. I found this last week. In one of Violet's notebooks. It's dated a week before she died. And it has your name on it. Calla froze. What? Not your exact name, but close enough. He handed her the envelope. On it, in Violet's handwriting, for the one who hears them crying with trembling hands. Calla opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. To whoever finds this, if you're reading this, it means Haven exists. It means someone believed in the dream enough to make it real. And it means you understand what I understood. That the world is full of children no one hears. Children who cry in empty rooms, who wait for someone to show up, who wonder if anyone cares, but you heard them. You showed up, and that makes all the difference. There's a quote I love. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else is more important. You chose those kids over your fear. Over convenience, over self-protection. That's the rarest kind of courage. Thank you for hearing them, for being the person I hoped would come, for proving that tenderness and strength can exist in the same heart. Keep going, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. The world needs more people like you. With gratitude, Violet Calla read it twice, tears streaming down her face. She looked at Ronan. How did she know? She didn't, he said softly. She just believed that somewhere, someone like you existed. And she was right. Calla folded the letter carefully and tucked it into her pocket. I'm going to frame this. Put it on my office wall. She'd like that. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the last rays of sunlight fade through the windows. Outside, the city hummed sirens, car horns, distant music. But in here, it was peaceful, safe. Can I ask you something? Calla said. Anything. Do you think she'd be proud? Of what we've built, Ronan didn't hesitate. I know she would. 3 months later, Calla stood in the same play area, but it looked different now. More lived, more loved. The walls were covered in kids' artwork. The bookshelves were messier. The blankets were more worn. But it was home for dozens of kids. For their families, for her mom was doing better new medication, better insurance, regular checkups. Jenny had gone back to school for social work. Marcus's cooking class was a hit. Leland had become a beloved fixture, equal parts grandfather and protector, and Ronan had become a friend. They had coffee every Sunday, compared notes on the twins' latest antics, planned fundraisers, argued about paint colors for the new expansion. It wasn't a romance, not yet anyway, maybe not ever, but it was connection, partnership, mutual respect built on shared purpose. One afternoon, Oliver and Owen toddled over while Calla was reading to a group of kids. Oliver climbed into her lap, blue blanket in hand. Owen curled up beside her. Thumb in his mouth, she looked down at them. These 2 tiny humans she'd saved on a rain-soaked day that felt like a lifetime ago, and felt her chest tighten with emotion. You okay? Ronan asked, watching from the doorway. She nodded, unable to speak. She sees you, you know, he said softly. Violet, wherever she is, she sees what you've built. And she's proud. Calla wiped her eyes and pulled the twins closer. I hope so. Outside, rain began to fall, soft and steady, washing the streets clean. And inside, surrounded by children and laughter and blue blankets. Calla Whitmore finally understood what it meant to be seen, not as a waitress, not as a victim, not as invisible, but as someone who mattered. Someone who made a difference. Someone who heard the crying and refused to walk away.